Confessions of a Madman, for old time's sake. 1. Life reaches its terminal phase in the human animal, when contemplation of death, undertaken at length, contaminates every thought, and the muddy brush touches all colors. And the deranged mind, seeking to insinuate its idea into the depths of the organism, to prepare it, adds to every consideration, why not death? Because the body does not want to die, and to quiet its panic at the thought of its own sudden disappearance, the bold philosopher that is every deranged mind adds to the mind's legislation a rider. Why not death? Unable to decide whether to shit or shower, the hunched victim, poised on the porcelain precipice, considers that to shit first would feel better, but the hot, greasy water of the shower would rinse the anus too dry, leading to invisible cracks later in the day and a bloody stool, whereas, by the same token, showering and then shitting would mean sitting wet on a slippery seat, and then, with each wipe made in China, toilet paper would come loose, crumble in your hands, leaving gobs of shit, defeating thus the purpose of the shower and of the shit. And then a voice says, why not death? It would solve the intractable problem, and what's more, to hang from the rafters, had this apartment of mine rafters, would mean shitting as a result, without ever a need or the feeling of a need for a shower. One would be free. I took a drink of beer just now, a few stanzas ago, and I felt the hot release into my brain, and I felt the twitch of my eye, persistent and unaffected, and I felt immediately my bowels loosen, or what I assume are my bowels, though strictly speaking it was only my rectum loosening. And I hope that in its own way it wasn't quietly trying to release, to accommodate the bottle. My rectum cheating on me without me knowing. Cattle mutilations have cattle with cored out rectums. I have thought to core out my own rectum, maybe with a broken bottle, when I finally commit suicide, to baffle investigators. But the key to the budding mystery would be for the rectum to disappear. To that end, he enlisted a local boy to transport the bloody rectum in a cooler to the sea, where his plans were foiled hours later by fishermen who scooped up the rectum in a net, thinking it was squid. When I am alone, I sometimes find that my eyes have been bugging out for several minutes, and I have been staring off into space for several minutes, my head wobbling slowly on its neck. And sometimes I laugh, and instantly grow sad, and a voice whispers, why not death? and my face grows serious, and my eyes bug out, and I start staring off into the distance, my head wobbling on its neck. Most nights I lie in bed, my bed, alone, drunk and delirious, and my heart beats hard because I am in a panic, because I don't remember the last 2/3 of the evening, and while I make a pastime out of violating social conventions, I despair at endangering my fragile life, which happens enough without my help, as when terrible improbabilities that defy natural law heap up on me, and I am chased from town to town, country to country, a haphazard immigrant. And while I am there dreaming, though I am awake, it hits me over the head again and again. Flashbacks of the past. The way it felt to be in a particular place at a particular moment, often accompanied by its smell, the feel of the air. Early morning or late nights are prevalent, as are changings of the seasons, and I am young again, waking up on a foggy September morning, delirious from dreaming, marched off to school. Or I am in a strange European city with buildings half historical, and shapes and contours and compromises meaningful only to the locals, who excuse every fault at bottom because they live there and at bottom can do no other. Or I am at some strange Swiss resort house, a university function, and all the mountains upchuck into one another before the others even get started, and pretend on top to be pastures, and it's late evening there, and I can breathe it, and some piece of shit in a goatee who likes white bread and Nutella is hitting on a girl I want to talk to, who neither of us will ever fuck. And the memories fade thus. We don't retain memories because they all end in iniquity. Each memory ends in dirty, hallowed despair, the despair of the living, a slave's 1,000 calculations to avoid death. And, by the way, tonight, when I am contemplating this, drinking stale air, lying in my bed, a voice will say, "Why not death?" After all, the rich, personalized memories of 100 generations have evaporated before they even felt the abyss, lost before they ever transformed into nothingness that is the gift of existence, long before any god or devil could claim them. The spirit is simply that, the breath, the respiration, and that's all it ever was. Nothing magical, nothing metaphysical, only metaphysical, inasmuch as reality is only metaphysical, without its bearings anywhere, without a grounding in any other than itself. And in response, 50 generations of slanty-eyed freaks have wrapped themselves in neon togas, and with shaved heads all declared all is nothingness, and played power games with followers eager to give up their lot's consignment of rice. You don't have a lot of Buddhist pedophiles, but you do have a growing number of British Buddhists. So expect the first number to grow. I once got a hand job from all of Shiva's hands. And Ahriman and Ahura Mazda and Zoroaster all marvel at my ability to fuck an infinite number of pussies on the number line. Georg Cantor proved in 1878 that my dick will always be more infinite than the number of pussies it can fuck. And does fuck, ladies, rest assured, by a certain margin. All questions of causality can be forgotten because the surface of a balloon expands when you blow air into it, and none of the intricate kung fu machinations of causality on its surface notice. And Jean-Paul Sartre lost his eye and had to wear the glass one because I fucked it. And Sylvia Plath, or was it Edith Piaf, stuck her head in that oven because I was fucking her doggy style, saying, "Where was my cake?" and "The Jews survived it," and "Suck it up." And half of the royal family owes me, owing to the fact that that fat butler who wasn't present at Diana's smash-up was infected with a disease of my making. Half of the forensic murder teams of Europe are controlled by me schizophrenically. And if I want, the Great Pyramid can be my butt plug. I have been harvesting my own organs for years. Two. The problem with cannibalism is likely not that humans taste like shit and so those who eat them are deranged, but rather that children probably taste good. I take no position on eating kids because God doesn't. As far as God is concerned, it's the movement of molecules. Nobody sees God leaping down into the fray, dressed as a referee, shouting, "That's it," as you prepare to gut a kid. My mom never gutted a kid, but she was gutted by a kid because she had a C-section. I think it was me. I always thought it was a circumcision scar. I walked all over Israel showing my dick, asking if circumcision was okay. I went to ISIS asking if they could put me in one of those orange Guantanamo jumpsuits and behead my dick for CNN. I went to the Wailing Wall and cried and cried and cried, and eventually flipped around and blasted off projectile shitting all over it and banged my head against the shitty bricks. Bad hummus. I burned Solomon's Temple. I was the first man to fuck under a KKK jumpsuit. I was the first man to survive the Crusades. That whole plague doctor mask those idiots wore in the Middle Ages, that was made by me for sniffing pussy. I am the Alpha and the Omega, and if the spiral of the galaxy resembles my crippled anus, beset by smears and streaks, well, I can only say, we can't all be supreme nigga. Note, I say nigga and not nigger, because nigger is what I call my mom. Once I came home, and there was a traveling salesman shitting in my bed, and I never got an explanation. Once a man from the U.S. Census paused and shit on my front porch, and I never got an explanation. Once I went to a concert in Dublin, and all at once the chieftains shit on stage without explanation. I heard rumors of food poisoning for years after, along with a voice that said, "Why not death?" Number 6, the Coombe, is my favorite. I once fucked an Irish woman who worked for the circus, who was proud of her copper coil contraceptive, but who, after I blasted inside her, got all heated and said, "Yogis hold it in." And then I realized, God damn it, contra Freud, that even the Irish can be neurotic. Jesus Christ never existed, just like this woman's circus probably, but then I figure I don't exist. Sometimes I jerk off and nothing happens. Nothing significant anyway, and I think I don't exist. And a little voice shows me a picture of me hanging from the rafters that don't exist, like in a Tudor house, big wooden rafters, and my, wouldn't it be easy to hang from those wooden rafters, except they don't exist. But I don't exist, which makes it all the easier to pour this beer, which doesn't exist, and which looks like my piss, and I'm comforted, or not comforted, whatever the reverse of comforted is, by the fact that when I toured Slavia on the southern side, they all thought Charles Bukowski was such a badass for smoking cigarettes and having a limp dick and tiny emaciated legs, but still fucking broads, because some could dig he was a writer, man, and not at all because his name ended in ski, which is a Slavic name, which is like why the Germans love David Hasselhoff, because he is a genuine talent, and not at all because he has a German name, though I was raised on Knight Rider, which I used to watch at my uncle's house, and he had a big beer gut just like mine today, except he had biceps and a circumspect manner, and my arms and legs are fully emaciated to the point where they will catch fire, start forest fires, and I could tour German stadiums because, in truth, even I can affect gravitas for German cunts, those strong plow women, and get them to think they're with a real man, though it's all hucksterism and aw shucks after a certain point. I only respect murderers, because what is the ground zero of human life? What is underneath when you strip away all horseshit aspiration and pretend? The cold, rugged eye of the murderer, and oh God, the fact that God won't intervene when somebody caught you, when it caught you, and your number wasn't supposed to be up, and I've got plans for tomorrow, the next 2 or 3 days, and Christ, somebody just near beheaded me outside this frontier tavern, and I've been brutally done away with like a pig, and I have only a moment left. God's been there for centuries, watching over these crimes, and one gets the sneaking suspicion that, to him, these aren't crimes. They are the celebrations of ghosts, where every molecule of light is a ghost, and every human feeling a fantasy, and a smear of light across a consciousness, and a frantic feeling of trying to get away, and a jerking glimpse of a night sky, and a sudden, almost welcome thud into a snowy earth. Well, these only mean things to you for but a moment, and nothing to God, who may not be a mentality, still less a feeling, but a great digestion. God has no eyes, so maybe he is blind? God has no ears. Ever consider he's deaf? Is he concerned for you and your family? Maybe God is exactly what we see, a brute, blind churning. You have to wonder somewhat at these Muslims with their spotty beards. Ever notice they don't have manly beards, but pubic hair beards? It is because Muslim societies are undergoing puberty. They are rebelling. Meanwhile, so-called Western societies are dying. No one is right, and while I am lying in bed tonight, my heart thumping, I will wonder what I said, unable to comprehend it. Maybe I would have been happier had I fucked a girl named Mabel. Maybe you only live inside human feeling, and if you find love and life in love, it is not only a distraction, but the name of the game, the whole game you have been put here for. No one can love me, not fully, because I am too strange, and not meant for human breeding, not fully, maybe limited breeding, and I am a broken man, possessed of some surprising talents here and there, but always broken, always ready to ask, why not death? And short-circuit any participation in life and its parade of orchestrated illusions, and ready to shit into a paper bag and hand it to the local policeman with purpose and say, "Here, a crime has been committed." But enough about me. What about you? I like to fuck with a hangover. It's because my body struggles to come back to life, and I can crack my nut 4, 5, or 6 times. Drunk, my body no longer cares about sex, about intimacy, about your meta-circuit of lust and desire for lust, everything simultaneously. But the next day, I'd love to fill your pussy with cum and mentally direct it all right up your anus, I mean your cervix, to get you as pregnant as inhumanly possible. Thus my body demands to live. It demands its time, a brute force, meat that is here and moving, not for its asking, but it nonetheless is, and by God, and by death it will act out its short, savage scenario, and with eyes closed and senses blurred, desire to drive on, to drive into you, if you are there, like God perhaps, a blind force, unthinking.